Hello friends, on the 24th of December, 1971 in South America, Lanza Airlines Flight 508 took off from Lima, capital of Peru. There were 86 passengers on board, heading toward the city of Pucallpa, flying over the dense Amazon rainforest. The first half hour of the journey was perfectly normal. The crew was serving breakfast, the pilots were chatting casually about their families, and everyone was cheerful. After all, the next day was Christmas, and everyone was excited to reunite with their loved ones. But as soon as the plane began to descend, dark clouds surrounded it. Suddenly, a massive thunderstorm appeared ahead. The pilots decided not to divert. They flew straight into the storm. Within minutes, darkness engulfed everything. The roared. The plane began to shake violently due to turbulence, so hard that luggage fell out of the overhead bins, crashing onto passengers. Panic spread everywhere. For 30 terrifying minutes, the aircraft shook uncontrollably. And then, at 21,000 feet, a bolt of lightning struck the right wing of the plane. The wing caught fire. Seconds later, it broke apart, followed by part of the left wing tearing away. Just 15 minutes before it was to land in Pucallpa, at around 10,000 feet, the plane disintegrated mid-air. Air traffic controllers on the ground suddenly saw the radar blip vanish. At first, there was hope that maybe the flight had made an emergency landing. But soon, the grim truth emerged. The plane had crashed completely. It became Peru's largest search operation in history. Days later, when rescue teams finally reached the Amazon jungle crash site, they found wreckage scattered everywhere. Suitcases hanging from trees, Christmas gifts dangling from branches like decorations on a giant Christmas tree. Search continued for days. When no survivors were found, authorities concluded that everyone had perished. After all, who could survive a fall from 10,000 feet? But the truth was different. The world didn't know it yet, but one passenger was still alive. In the middle of the dense Amazon rainforest, miles away from any human settlement, a 17-year-old girl named Julianne Kopci was still breathing. It was nothing short of a miracle. But now the real struggle began. Injured, disoriented, and utterly alone, Julianne lay on the jungle floor. The rescue team had already stopped searching, and everyone, even her family, believed she was dead. Julianne had been traveling with her mother Maria on that flight. They were heading to a biological research station called Panguana, established by her zoologist parents. The plan was to celebrate Christmas there together. Originally, they had planned to fly a few days earlier, but Julianne wanted school prom and graduation, so they booked a last-minute ticket. Because of the holiday rush, all other airlines were sold out. Only Lanza Airlines had seats left. Julianne's father had warned them many times not to fly with Lanza. It had a terrible safety record. People even joked in Spanish. Lanza, Lanza de panza, meaning Lanza lands on its belly. In the previous years, multiple Lanza planes had crashed, and this flight, Flight 508, could become its last. The aircraft was a Lockheed L-188 Electra, a turboprop model designed for desert regions. Its wings were rigidly attached to the fuselage, not flexible like modern aircraft, which made it incapable of handling turbulence. It had already been retired from US service years earlier. The passengers had no idea. This plane was not meant to fly over mountains. When the lightning struck, Julianne was sitting on seat 19F, a window seat in the second last row. Her row of 3 seats broke off from the fuselage, and since her seatbelt was fastened, she stayed strapped to a seat as she fell from 10,000 feet. What happened next was an unbelievable miracle in human history. Julianne, still strapped to her seat, plummeted through the air. The roaring sound of the plane and passengers' screams faded, replaced only by the howl of rushing wind. The seatbelt dug deep into her abdomen, making it hard to breathe. Below her stretched the endless green canopy of the Amazon, dense trees like a field of broccoli. She lost consciousness mid-fall. When she woke up, she was lying on the forest floor. It was Christmas morning, December 25th. Rain had poured all night. Her clothes were soaked in mud. She tried to stand up, but collapsed again and again. Finally, after several attempts, she managed to stay upright. Realizing her collarbone was broken, her knee twisted, and she had deep wounds on her shoulder and leg. One eye was swollen shut, the other could barely see. Her glasses were gone, and she had a concussion. So how did she survive a fall from 10,000 feet? There were three miraculous factors. 1. Updrafts. Strong upward air currents caused by the storm slowed her descent. 2. Her seat row spun rapidly, creating a partial helicopter effect, reducing. 3. The dense jungle canopy and vines acted like a natural cushion, absorbing the impact. And of course, luck. The exact angle, tree cover, and impact position all favored her survival. No one else from the flight lived, but Julianne's real battle had just begun. Injured and alone in the world's deadliest rainforest, she called out for her mother, but heard only the sounds of frogs, insects, and birds. Luckily, Julianne wasn't new to the jungle. She had spent 3 years with her zoologist parents in the Panguana research station. She knew which animals were venomous, which plants were poisonous, and how to stay calm in danger. After a few hours of rest, she began searching for survivors, calling out for her mother, but no reply. She occasionally heard rescue helicopters, but the forest was too thick for anyone to spot her. Julianne realized she was completely alone. She needed 2 things to survive: water and food. She licked rainwater drops off leaves to quench her thirst. But food was harder. People assume jungles are full of edible plants, but in the Amazon, sunlight barely reaches the ground. So almost nothing grows near the forest floor. She found some mushrooms, but suspected they were poisonous, so she avoided them. Then, she found a box of fruitcakes from the wreck, but rain had ruined them. Finally, she discovered a bag of candies, just 30 pieces. She decided to eat only a few candies per day, unsure how long she'd be stranded. Her watch, a gift from her grandmother, was still working. Now she had to make the toughest decision: stay or move. Her father had once taught her, if you ever get lost in the jungle, find running water and follow it downstream. Small streams lead to rivers, and rivers lead to people. She soon found a tiny trickle of water emerging from the soil and followed it. But the Amazon wasn't an easy path. Fallen trees, thorny bushes, slippery rocks, and deadly creatures like snakes and spiders stood in her way. At night, she had to sleep carefully, near a rock or tree, to protect her back from predators. She tried to start a fire, but everything was wet from rain. By the 3rd day, she found a blackened turbine from the plane wreck. Vultures circled overhead. She knew corpses were nearby. Soon, she found 3 passengers still strapped to their seats, buried headfirst into the ground. For a moment, she froze, terrified one might be her mother. But when she saw nail polish on the woman's toes, she sighed in relief. Her mother never wore nail polish. She moved on. Days passed. Her candies ran out. She drank river water to survive, getting minerals but no nourishment. She was weak, dizzy, and hopeless. On the 6th day, she heard a familiar bird call, a huatzin, which she knew built nests near open water. Finally reached a wide river, about 30 feet across. For the first time, she saw clear sky. Then, the sound of a plane. It flew red. She waved desperately, screamed for help. But the pilot didn't see her. That was the last. Julianne realized the search had been called off. She felt her last hope vanish. But then she remembered her father's words again. So she kept walking, day after day. Her wounds infected, her strength fading, yet she followed the water. When the lumbermen found Julianne Coetzee on the 11th day, they were shocked to see a teenage girl emerge alive from the Amazon wilderness. Her body was frail, covered in insect bites and wounds, but her spirit was unbroken. The men cared for her, cleaned her injuries with gasoline to kill the maggots, and took her by canoe to a nearby village. From there, she was airlifted to a hospital, where she finally reunited with her father. Tragically, Julianne learned that her mother and the rest of the passengers had not survived. She was the only one, out of 92 people on Flight 508, to make it out alive. The media swarmed her story, calling it a miracle of nature and human endurance. Scientists and journalists tried to understand how she could have survived such a fall, but Julianne herself attributed it to luck, knowledge, and willpower. Years later, she returned to Germany and went on to study biology, continuing her parents' work in the Peruvian rainforest. Her memoir, When I Fell from the Sky, became a global bestseller, and her life inspired documentaries and films around the world. Julianne Koepscher's story is not just one of survival. It's a testament to the strength of the human spirit, reminding us that even in the darkest moments, hope can be the difference between life and death.